We're going to be using Google Sheet to graph data, and I want to walk you through how to set up your table and how to make sure that you are graphing the correct kind of graph that you want to do, and including all of the labels you need so that you are scoring a 3 or a 4 on graphing. On here I have set up my data so that my independent variable, which is time, is in my very first column. I am going to leave that first row for the headings, and if you notice in each of these situations, the heading has what it is we're measuring, and it usually has the units in parentheses. That's super important. What's also important is that the heading, or that first row, is the only row that has letters in it. You'll notice I have no other words or letters down below, only numbers. That is crucial for Google Sheets to be able to turn a data table into a graph. Now, some of you might have this problem where your heading runs into the following column. In order to fix that, just click on the number next to that row. So I clicked on my number 1, and then I'm going to go up here to this little box. It says text wrapping. When I click that arrow, I'm going to go down and click on the one that looks like a U-turn. What that does is it tells these data cells to keep the font or the text within that cell and just make the cell bigger. So now I can see everything. Please make sure that you are using columns that are right next to each other. You're not skipping a column. Otherwise your data might look a little funky, or it might not graph correctly when you go to graph it. So my data, if I'm doing something like time as my independent variable, I always start at 0 since we want our graphs to also start at 0. And then in the next few cells, those are my y-axes. That's going to be what I have as a label for y-axis, and that's usually my dependent variable. So usually it's whatever it is we're measuring in our experiment, or whatever it is we're tracking for data over time. Now I have all of my data entered. You'll want to make sure you do the same thing. When I want to create a graph, I'm going to simply highlight by clicking and dragging that entire data table. Now I also will point out, if you want to take your data table and copy and paste it into a spreadsheet or a Google Doc, make sure that you are adding borders onto it so that it's easy to read. To do that, go up to this little box up here, and you can click on Add Borders. You can change the colors if you want. You can fill some of them in, but I don't really need to do that. So here's my data table. Again, just click and drag, hold down your mouse, and then we're ready to create our graph. Google Sheets has evolved a lot over the last few years, so all you really need to do is insert a chart. You can go up to Insert and do Chart right here, or you can go to your toolbar up here and click on the little button that looks like a graph. And when I do that, wow, it popped up a chart. Now it doesn't have everything that I want, so it has, I'm just going to run through the mental checklist. Does it have everything I want? It's a line graph, so that's great, and has time on the bottom in seconds, which are labeled, but I actually kind of want a label for my y-axis. So I'm going to be able to customize my graph, and right here at Chart and Axis Titles, I can change the title of my chart. If I wanted it to be number of Skittles, a number of M&Ms, I want to actually make sure it has all of my variables in it. It's missing time, so I'm going to say number over time. I can change the y-axis to have a title. If I click over here, the drop down, I'm going to change my vertical axis title, and this gives me a chance to write it right here. My axis title is tracking the number of atoms over number of atoms. Sometimes you might have it actually as a percent, and if you have units, maybe I was measuring this in percent, I'll put the percent in parentheses, and it added it there right automatically for me. I didn't have to do anything. It is automatically there. And I have time on the bottom. I don't need to change that, but if I did, I would just go to click on vertical axis title, and that would allow me to, horizontal axis title, and that would allow me to make any changes that I needed to do. Maybe it wasn't seconds, maybe I actually wanted to add minutes. There we go. And it'll automatically update for me. If I want to change the chart title or this line, for instance, notice how we have the dots here. I actually want to make those a line as well. To make sure that the second set of data is also a line graph, I discovered that I have to go up to Customize, Chart Style, and I actually had to click Plot Null Values, and that is what allowed this to become a line graph so that I could compare the number of Skittles and the number of M&Ms over time. If I want to include this into a document, I'm going to go up here and I am going to copy the chart. And what that does is it puts on your computer's clipboard, and then you can go into a document and just paste it in the, I'm sure I could do the same thing in here. And you can add this to any document you're working with, or if you are doing a lab synopsis, you'll be able to copy and paste this into your chart.